Okay, so I just want everybody to know I'm welcoming Kellee and like, oh, I'm gonna try not to get your last name butchered,
Mhm.
but it's Kellee Forkenbrock. Is that correct?
Correct. It is literally pronounced the way it's spelled.
It is.
Yes.
It is phonetic. Is
Yes,
that
it
the
is
right word?
indeed.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but Kellee, you go by a couple of different names.
I
So,
know. It's like I'm on the run. So Kellee Forkenbrock is my name. That is the name that pays my bills. Yes, Kellee Forkenbrock. Another name that pays a little bit of my bills is Eliza David, and that is my writing pseudonym. I have written 12 romance novels, all self-published. And I absolutely adore romance. I adore reading it, writing it, and just consuming it in general. So those are the two names you can find me by. So if you're looking for the librarian, that's Kellee Forkenbrock. If you're looking for the author, that's Eliza David, but I answer to both.
that's awesome. I want to give people just a little bit of background about who you are, and then I have some questions about that I know if I don't tell people who you are at the beginning, I'll
Mhm.
forget, and they'll be wondering who the hell we're talking about. So you are speaking at the U conferences at our next conference called Imperfectly You in March next month already. And part of the reason we were really excited to have you is because you've got 20 plus years of marketing experience. And of course, a lot of the people that join U conferences certainly look up to people that have great marketing experience. And you're also a librarian in North Liberty, right?
I am. I've been a librarian for 3 years, but as you mentioned, yes, the first 2 decades of my career, I spent in the private sector, doing everything from marketing to advertising, multimedia advertising to program management for state testing contracts.
And I'm sure all of that comes into play as you're promoting yourself as an author. You know, like everything that you've learned about marketing comes into play when you're marketing your book and things. But I have to know, where did Eliza David come from? The idea of pen names is really interesting to me. Where did this name come from?
So when I wrote my first novel, The Cougarette, which shameless plug is free on Amazon Kindle. You can get it, it's perma free. If you have a Kindle, you can read that book for free. When I wrote that book, I was thinking, okay, Kellee Forkenbrock would look really clumsy as a romance novelist's name on the cover of this really steamy book. So I thought, what could I use? So my daughter's middle name is Eliza. My son's middle name is David. And that's how I came up with Eliza David.
I love it, and I bet it does look it's like nice and even numbered. It looks, you
Yes,
can center it on a page or on a book really nicely. Like
yes.
really great letters for fonts. Like I agree, that worked out really well. So did you name your children based off of that?
What came first, the chicken or the egg? No, I named my kids first, and then I started writing when I was 37. It was 2014 is when I did NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month. For those who don't know, it's every November. The challenge is free to participate globally, and you write 50,000 words in 30 days. So I thought to myself in 2014 for November, I thought I could do it. And I did it, and that's how The Cougarette was born. Cougarette is the novel, one of 6 novels in a series about a relationship between a younger woman and, I mean, a younger man and an older woman.
Ooh,
And
that
the
is
leads are
steamy.
both African American, and but it is a very diverse cast of characters throughout the 6 books in the series. But after I wrote it, and I thought, I, I'm gonna see if I can publish this, and I self-published it, and it just kind of grew from there. I wrote those 6 books in 18 months.
I was just gonna say, you've only been writing since 2014, and you've written
Yes,
12 books since then. Like,
yes, and I haven't written a book in, boy, I haven't released a book in about 3 years. So I've actively just been writing, what, 5, 6 years, because when I wrote The Cougarette, the story just flowed, and one book became 6. And I honestly don't remember any of 2015. I was literally just head in my computer writing the entire time.
love it.
And then I kind of slowed up a little bit once my professional uh, goals started changing. As you mentioned, I worked in the private sector for 20 years, and when I turned 40, I discovered that I was kind of done with that. My last employer, I just stopped. It was a mutual like dissolution, honestly, even though I left. But I left that employer, and I thought to myself, I'm 40, what do you want to do with your life? And I said, I want to work with books. And I started looking for jobs specifically with anything with books, printing presses, bookstores, whatever. And I saw there was a part-time job available at North Liberty Library. And I'm 40 years old, and I'm like, I'm going to take a part-time job as a librarian. And I have 2 kids in private school. And my husband's like, okay, is this going to turn into a full-time job at some point? I'm like, yeah. And I was at North Liberty part-time. I was also at another library part-time as well, Coralville Public Library. So I was doing that for the entire summer of my 40th year in 2019. And then I went full-time at North Liberty 4 months later, and that's the position I hold today. And it was a huge risk, but it was the most gratifying decision of my adult life.
Interesting. That is so interesting because, okay, I think most of the people that are in our target audience here at U conferences, they would probably remember, like, a librarian is somebody that organizes a card catalog.
Mhm.
And I don't even know what a librarian's job look like right now, because do card catalogs even exist still? Is that still a
It
thing?
depends on the library. What I will say is that part of my job, my official title is Public Services Librarian for North Liberty Library.
Okay.
And what I will say is that libraries, we have a marketing problem. We talked about marketing at the beginning of this conversation, and that is a famous quote from Wayne Wiegand. He is a professor, a noted library science person that I've been learning about in school because I'm also in grad school. And yeah, I know, I do a lot. Um, and libraries do have a marketing problem because libraries are so much more than card catalogs and books. And that's one of the taglines I use when I introduce myself to people in the business sector. When I introduce myself as a librarian, sometimes business people, and I know business people because I was one for 20 years. I know executives, and they kind of double take, like, a librarian, like, what are you doing at this networking event for business people?
Right.
And I tell them, libraries, specifically at North Liberty Library, we have meeting rooms, we have study rooms, we have full technology suites. We're expanding our technology suites. We're going to be having hotspots available for borrowing within the spring and summer months. I mean, there are so many ways that libraries serve businesses, especially small business owners, local business people, just like the folks we're expecting to see at U conferences, especially small business women, business people of color. The library can be a great resource. And not only just North Liberty Library, but thousands of public libraries all over the nation. And part of what I do for North Liberty Library is to really reintroduce the library to business folks, and because we got the families are coming to the library, the kiddos are
Right.
coming to the library, the retirees are coming to the library. It's those business folks, especially local business people, who are the fuel of our community, who may not be aware of how helpful and resourceful the library is for absolutely no cost.
Right. That's one of the things I was just going to say is that I've done some business mentoring before, and I've showed people how to get on the library's website to find mailing lists for, like, direct
Mhm.
mail, things like that, at no cost to you. You
Yeah.
can do that. But I don't think a lot of, like, anybody that's just starting a business and is resources are scarce and expensive.
Mhm.
I've done, even helping people get a computer to work on their books and things like that can be really, really tough. And I guess it never really even occurred to me that the library may have absolutely everything that they need to get professional quicker, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I implore anyone, even if you're listening in and tuning into this live feed from outside of where we are here in Johnson County, Lynn County, Iowa, I implore you to go to your public library and find out what resources they have.
Yeah.
Libraries have been growing by bounds in offerings that we can give
Yeah, I
for
think.
absolutely free, especially during the pandemic. We helped lots of people who are out of work, our citizens, our community members. give them free access to Wi-Fi so they can look up jobs, give them free copies. We offer free copies of black and white copies at the library, up to 30 copies for absolutely free.
Wow.
So
I don't think I didn't know that. I had no idea.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why I love what I do as public services librarian. I get to talk about the library all day long to business owners. I'm also a part of the Iowa City Association for Business Partnership. I am a newly inducted ambassador, where I get to connect one-on-one with my fellow ambassadors who are also local business owners and representatives of services and resources, and let them know the library is here for you to support that, again, for zero cost.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I want to switch gears a little bit, but it also has to do with your librarian, journey. So your talk at U conferences is called "Get Busy Being," if I remember correct. Now I have to look at my notes here in front of me, but right.
Yep, it's
She's
called
busy.
yep, She's Busy Being. It's a story of sobriety, switching careers, and staying relatively, in quotes, sane.
Well,
Um,
they're calling 2022, 2023 the great or not
Resignation.
resignation. I was going to call it
Yep.
recession, and I'm like, I don't know. We don't need to
We
offer
don't need another one of
that.
those.
No, but the great resignation, and I kind of feel like your timing is really great. And having done this at a time when it was less acceptable, I mean, now headlines are saying, "Yes, quit your damn job." Um, how do you feel about giving women that, like, almost that power to get busy being with whatever that means? How does that land for you?
For me, it really is, especially with women, I'm happy that my journey led me to what I say with zero hyperbole is my dream job. Like, I literally get to get up every morning and go to a library and talk to people about the importance of libraries and our services every single day. And I love it. But I also love the idea of women being able to say, you know what? Working 9 to 5 is not for me. My life is shifting. My life is changing. I think as women, and I think the younger women are starting to get, because I'm 43. So I think women who are 15, 20 years younger than me are getting it in their 20s that, hey, this is really my life to craft for me. And I don't have to, sometimes we equate being busy, working, with actually being a human being. And that's what She's Being Busy is all about. She's Busy Being is all about. It's really about looking at your life. And I'm looking at it through 3 phases in my talk. So in my talk, we're going to talk about how I got sober, because I'll be 4 years sober in September, on September 2nd.
Congratulations.
Um, Thank you. Thank you. We'll talk about how I came to that decision. We'll talk about switching careers and what switching careers looks like in midlife. That was, switching careers at 40, that is not something I envisioned for myself in my 20s or even in my 30s. But it happened, and I am so grateful that it did. And we're going to talk about that. And then we'll talk about, staying sane through it all. I think as women, we wear so many hats. Some of us are parents. Some of us are, healers. Some of us are sisters. We're friends. We do a lot. And sometimes when we're doing so much, we're not sure how to keep it all intact. So I work full time at the library, 40 hours a week. I have a full load of classes for my master's in library sciences. I attend remotely at the university. I have 2 kids and a husband, and I'm also a writer. And I also have friends that I want to hang out with every once in a while. And also, I'd like to have some time to myself. So those are so many facets. Like, how do you stay sane and try to get all of those facets of your life checked off? It is possible. But yeah, we're going to talk a lot about that. And that's why I think with this great resignation that's going on, this is an opportunity for women to really become more present in their lives and get busy being and not necessarily doing, and thinking about what does this next phase of my life look like.
There's this quote that I wrote down one time. That they say if you teach a man to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime or something.
Mhm.
And that whole quote. And I always say, if you teach a woman to fish, though, like what she does with that opportunity of learning something and giving back. And I think one of the things women take on is, what's going on socially, social justice wise, like what's going on with their kids, what's going on with their communities, with their cultures. We take that on our shoulders really heavily. and getting the opportunity to kind of speak on that. And I think the last 2 years, although have been a complete disaster in many ways, it's also really taught us that what's important and what we believe in is worth standing up for and shifting our lives. I think if the pandemic didn't happen, we wouldn't realize that the world could just stop and we'd figure it out, you know? And I
Yeah.
think it kind of gave us that, like, oh, well, you know, a lot of our jobs stopped entirely. I'm assuming yours stopped entirely in 2020.
Yes, in
Oh, wow.
2020. So at the library, so I went full time at the library in October of 2019. 6 months later, we closed. Now, this is where I'm grateful of my 20 years in the private sector, because I think you mentioned at the top that, that experience helps me now. It absolutely did, because working from home wasn't a foreign concept for me. So, because I'd done it through 2 pregnancies, I'd done it, over 20 years in my career. I'd done some work from home from time to time, but this was different because this was this globally impactful pandemic, and libraries were not used to being closed. But we did close in March of 2020 through July of that year. And
Wow.
that's where a lot of my creativity really kicked in. One example of that was establishing one of the weekly shows that we have on North Liberty Library's Facebook channel, which is called Love, Light, and Lit. Because all of our programming at this point, as you can imagine, in a library, we have tons of programming that's in person and interactive and very human and connected. And now we have to turn that into virtual programming. And my director said, "Okay, we need some virtual programming ideas. Can you come up with one?" And I said, "Okay." So I started thinking, and I thought about, what do people need right now? They need to know that love is here, that love is still within us, even in the midst of this drastic change. They need to know that there is still light in their lives despite having to stay at home and being quarantined. And more importantly, they need to know that the library is still here, that literature is still here, that access to information still is here. So I thought of Love, Light, and Lit. And it is a weekly show that we started during the pandemic, and we still continue every Monday at noon. I get on live Facebook. So if you're not following North Liberty Library on Facebook, do it right now, and you'll get the alerts when I'm on every Monday at noon. And we use that. That was birthed from the pandemic. That was birthed from having, a director who said, "Here, create something," giving me that space to create something. And it turned into a weekly show. And it is also a monthly podcast,
That is so
all
cool.
at the library. So yeah, I will say the pandemic really changed how programming went for libraries. I think all libraries can agree with that. But for me personally, it gave me a gateway to some creativity that we still have in practice today.
Yeah, I love that. And you know, as much as the pandemic has been harmful, that like we have to kind of seek out those things. And I
Mhm.
think another thing that empowerment wise, with women and women of color during the pandemic, like I think a lot of women realized that they could have a say where they didn't maybe feel like they had a say before, or maybe it was just like the build of diversity and awareness of diversity that happened. I know we're the same age,
Mhm.
so and you said you told me earlier you grew up in Chicago, which is a very
Mhm.
diverse place. Now here you are in Iowa, which is the opposite of that. How have you been able to like stand in your power here as in leadership as a woman of color? Because I feel it in your presence that your where your leadership is and that you're able to make a difference in that way. But what are some things that we could all learn from you that you've learned along the way being a leader as a woman of color?
Absolutely. Well, I have to say that everything about me that stands out as far as leadership is concerned, I absolutely learned from my mother. I was raised by my mother. She was a single parent, and she has always taught me to believe in myself. Even if we didn't always agree on my approaches and my methods, she always taught me to believe in myself and to know that inherently that I am that chick, I am that girl, and what's for me is for me. So those are the same lessons that I also uh, use with my 2 children, especially my daughter. I have a 10-year-old daughter who definitely exhibits that same energy, that same extroverted energy that I had as a child, that I still have. And I try to funnel that and channel that by letting her know you can do whatever you want to do. And just really that empowerment that comes from birth. I think a lot of people sometimes have missed that in life. So they have to go seek it as adults, which is fine too. That's a journey. But for me, I'm very grateful that I had that from the very start. So when I came out to Iowa, of course, me coming from Chicago, I was raised on the South Side, so I'm from the city. And I went to a pretty diverse high school. So going from a diverse high school to a very predominantly white, small liberal arts college, I went to a college in Clinton, Iowa, which is about 90 miles west of Iowa City,
Right.
or east of Iowa City. And it was absolutely very white. And going in that and being in that space for the first time in my teens, after being in a diverse city, after being at a diverse high school, was jarring at first. And then working in the professional sector after graduation, I moved here to Iowa City in 2000. And I worked for two major employers in Johnson County. Both were predominantly white departments. And those experiences really shaped how I embrace my own unique perspective. Because I think for women of color, specifically Black women, we have to know that we have a unique perspective that is valuable and that is an asset, and to use that to your perspective. I brought a different perspective. I feel like I've brought a different perspective to every meeting I've ever participated in my professional career and continue to. And I have to know that inherently. Even if someone else does not think that, you have to know that inherently. If you don't know that, nobody else is going to know that. And that goes for all women,
Right.
specifically women of color. We have a special set of circumstances where we deal with microaggressions. We deal with stereotypes that people inherently think of Black women. And to me, it's like, if you can have that mindset, but as long as I know that what I'm saying is authentic and I'm coming from a real place and a real perspective, I can't control that. Like I always say, you cannot control what comes your way. Absolutely not. You cannot control what comes your way, but you can control what you engage. And I'm certainly not going to engage anyone who doesn't think my perspective is valuable. I can be wrong. You can come and give me a different perspective, but you have to honor my perspective before you try to tell me, what yours is. Like we have to have that mutual honor and that mutual respect. And I think as long as that exists, Black women will continue to move in these spaces. And it's also about bringing Black women with you. There are many Black women in Black businesses in our area. I Heart Black Business, Candace at I Heart Black Business, Gabrielle Williams, who is a chef and an author right here in our own backyard. Like these are women who are doing the work. Of course, Rakisha Harrington, everyone knows who she is, of course, on our city council. Latasha Deloach. I mean, there are Black women who are right here literally in our backyards, who are doing the work every day. And there are more Black women that they know, like reaching out. I implore women who are not of color. I've implored white women and other women of color who are not Black to reach out to these Black women and reach out to these Black businesses who are literally right here in our backyard. Like link with me on LinkedIn. I will leave all my links at the end, of course, but I think it also means that we need to start saying Black women's names in rooms.
Yes,
We need to start saying their names in rooms. So those are just a few of the things I would suggest. Just know who you are inherently. And if someone didn't instill that in you, go find that and say Black women's names in rooms. Say women of color names in rooms, and make sure that they're being platformed.
I think we all have something to learn from one another. And I think as, a white person that grew up in a very, very white community, like until I was in my 20s, I had zero Black people in my circle, like not at my school, not zero, like absolutely none. So I think one of the things I've had to learn, and thankfully there's really good people around that have not made me learn this the hard way, but I've had to learn to shut up and listen to perspective, exactly like you said, honor somebody else's perspective. It's kind of hard not to argue with it because you want to say, but no, I don't mean for you to feel that way. And understanding that nobody means for anybody to feel any way, but it doesn't mean they don't feel that way. So
Yeah.
exactly what you said, honoring it and listening and understanding. Our even U conferences was predominantly white and still is, but was all white at the beginning. And we started having conversations with women of color in the area saying, what are we doing wrong? Like we don't feel like we're excluding anyone. And it was Brianna Smallwood that was like, you've got to go out there and make the invitation.
Yeah.
You've got to go out there and, oh, you can't, it's not enough to just say, oh, everyone is welcome. You have
Mhm.
to go say, you as a Black woman are welcome and wanted here. Let's open the conversation. Like it has to be because of
Intentional.
history. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It
because of
has to be
history.
intentional.
Yeah,
I always say that, and that's part of what I do at work here is that, I want, it's like I said with the library, we have the families, we have the retirees, we have the kiddos. Local business people do not feel like they have a place at the library. So it is our job, specifically mine as well. And a lot of our librarians have created these relationships as well to go out to businesses and invite them in. And that can be done with us as well. And I want to go back to your point about, listening. That is so key. As a cis Black woman, it is my job to listen when a person from the LGBTQIA family is talking. It is my job as a woman to listen when someone who does not look like me is talking. And I think the key to that is to enter every conversation wanting to learn, not wanting to communicate, not wanting to be right, not wanting to say your piece. Enter every conversation wanting to learn. It's something that I use in my personal life, and it's something I use in my professional life too. When I'm talking with businesses, I don't just walk in and say, hey, we are the library. We can do A, B, C, D, E, F, G for you. They're business people. They're busy. They don't want to hear my sales pitch. But what I do is I come in and I want to learn, what resources do you feel like your business needs right now? Tell me
right.
about your business. So when you have a conversation with a person of color or someone who doesn't look like you, with the intent to learn about them instead of wanting to tell them about you, that is the first step to listening.
Yeah, it's not easy to do.
It
I'm
isn't.
grateful. I'm grateful for all of the people that I've had, the opportunity to speak with that have kind of helped me understand that. But um, j- just because something isn't easy doesn't mean it's not worth it. Because at the end of the
Exactly.
day, now the relationships that I've built, and I'm sure, I mean, it's interesting how you're able to, make the connection between marketing the library
Mhm.
and microaggression racism. Like it's interesting, but it totally clicks in my head, and you're right. And I think we can do it with many other subjects, not just racism, not just
Yeah.
um misogynistic garbage that we've all been dealing with for years.
Yes,
It's all related.
it
So
is.
and I think that's one of the things we want people to know at U conferences, that especially as like the self-help the self-help market has kind of gone downhill lately, and people are tired of being told that their mindset just needs to shift and that they just need
Yeah.
to embrace all of this. Like what we want people to understand is that this is an opportunity to open conversations. It's an opportunity to connect with people and continue it as we go, and we've been very successful in that. So having you a part of this conversation is really a testament to that, and very cool. So I want to thank you for that.
Absolutely. This has been great. I'm really excited for you conferences. I'm really excited to talk about my journey. And most importantly, I'm just really excited to hear the journeys that come back to me. I really want to open up for my session. I really want to open up space to let women tell their stories. Maybe there's someone in there that's thinking about sobriety or who's sober curious. Maybe there's someone there who's ready to switch jobs after being in the same career for 10 years. Maybe there's someone out there who's a parent or a caregiver who is feeling at the end of their rope and they just want to get some sanity back of some kind. And if any of those women exist, if any of those people exist and they are at this conference, I absolutely implore them to visit my workshop if they have time, because we're going to talk about all three of those things: sobriety, switching lanes, and staying sane. I can't wait.
It's interesting. Sobriety has been a topic at U conferences many times. You're not the only sober speaker, and uh, it's always been. And my husband's sober as well, so that's part of my life in a different way. But I'm not, but he is. So that's a balance in and of itself to figure out.
Sure.
But I love that it's talked about, because that also there also needs to be room at the table for people that are sober for whatever reason that they are,
Mhm.
that that they're accepted into the conversation and into social circles and into experiences. So like we have a cocktails and conversations piece of U conferences, and we try to make it known, very well known, that every alcoholic cocktail that we have has a mocktail version. And I
Mhm.
hate that cocktail is synonymous with alcohol because, as you
Right.
know, that word doesn't mean alcohol
Right.
drink. It means a mixture. But anyway, we'll work on that. Probably never. I never go that way. But it is important that there's options available to people, that they don't feel left out because they're not partaking in different things, or that they've made that choice. So I love that the conversation's being had about sobriety, because I think more women need to hear it and hear that it's okay if that's the choice they want to make for their
Yeah,
lives.
I think the sober now I got sober and I always make this joke to myself. I got sober in September of 2019 and then the pandemic started and I thought to myself once we were like shut down like I was like, "Oh, we're not going anywhere." I thought to myself, "Well, this was a fine time for me to get sober." But I'm glad that I did because I know deep in my heart now. See, my sober story, I won't share too much because I'm going to save it for the conference, but my sober story is really not very traumatic, I guess is the word I want to use. It's not, there was no, my bottom was very soft. Um, and I'm literally someone who was a part of the mommy wine culture. I was hardcore into that. I still cringe when I look at my Facebook memories, and there were so many glasses of wine, so many cocktails. And I think to myself, geez, like I was really into that lane. And then I got sober. And I think that with the pandemic, a lot more women were realizing either while they were in the act of drinking or feeling the urge to drink more coming because of this pandemic. And that's why you see a lot more conversations about specifically women getting sober, the sober curious movement, the Cali sober movement. You hear, it's kind of a buzzword now.
It
And
is.
what I hope to do with my session at U conferences is to really bring that down to earth and kind of take away some of the buzz and talk about what sobriety really looks like, and some of the aspects of what it looks like, but also what I've gained from it.
Man,
And so
I
I'm
love
really,
that. I
yeah.
love that you said your rock bottom was soft, because I think a lot of people assume, and even a lot of people that drink occasionally assume, that their life has to be out of control
Yeah.
to be sober, to make that choice. And
No, it doesn't. And I'll talk about, what September 2nd, 2019 looked like for me in our talk in the session, but it really wasn't. It was a culmination of both family history and a decision I had been thinking about, because you're always thinking about getting sober before you actually get sober. And it was certainly a passing thought of mine for at least 5 to 10 years. It's like my drinking had just increased with motherhood. And that's, again, that's not everybody's journey. But the great thing about sobriety is that just like with creativity, it is your journey to create. It is your journey to craft. And it doesn't have to be you at the end of your rope. You can
mm,
choose to get sober at any time. And sometimes you may have to get up and, fall down and get back up, but you can always, that choice is available at any time. So yeah, shattering the myth that you have to be like euphoria level, like is not, you don't have to be rude. You don't have to be rude. You can just, it can be a decision that you come to very gradually.
that's awesome. And I think a lot of women need permission to think outside the box. And
Yeah.
we and I see it changing with younger generations, but I think you and I can attest to, growing up in the 80s and the 90s, you were expected to start a career, stay with it for your entire life. You were expected to, get that, retirement and all of the things that came along with that. And that started to change as we started to come into high school and college years. It started, where people were moving jobs more often, but the generations before us were making fun of people for it. So, you weren't really sure what to do.
Yeah.
And the same thing with like they call it Pinterest moms or whatever, but there is an expectation that you're able to hold down the fort, and you're able to raise the kids and have the job, and do the
Yeah.
volunteering and all of these things, and like you're supposed life is supposed to look a certain way, right?
Yeah. One
And
thing I've learned is, like, especially in my 40s, is you have to give yourself grace out here, because if you are a woman who is managing a career, a family, a creative life, a social life, or any combination of those. If you're just trying to survive, if you are a single woman with no husband, no children, and you're in your 40s, you're just trying to survive, you have to understand you have to give yourself grace. And it's not easy to give ourselves grace. We give our friends grace all the time. We give our kids grace. We give our spouses grace. We really have to extend that same grace to ourselves. Understand that, you know what, if you're going to be on this committee and work full time, you might miss that ballet. You might miss the first 20 minutes of the kids show. It's okay. Someone is there. There's someone in that audience representing for that child. Let them be an advocate for that child while you go take care of business.
yeah,
And women have to give themselves that permission. I think it also comes, especially for the mothers out there, it comes with age, especially as your children become a little bit more self-reliant. You give yourself a little bit more grace with that, because you got them out of diapers. They're potty trained. They can relatively feed themselves. They can stay home for limited amounts of time alone. You feel some accomplishment there, and you kind of give yourself a little bit more grace. But you young mothers with babies and toddlers and preschoolers and grade school kids, give yourselves grace too. And we're going to talk about that too in there too, is that we have to give ourselves grace as moms, as partners, and professionals.
it's
We absolutely
hard.
have to give ourselves grace. It's hard, but we absolutely
Got
have
to
to
do
do
it.
it. We're going to go.
No, I agree, and I don't think I don't think it's healthy or wise, and to each their own, of course. But I don't think it's healthy or wise to wait to live your life until your children are grown.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
changes who you are as a person, and what are you going to do? Like they're going to leave, and then you're gonna have no idea who you are.
yeah. I wrote my first book when my youngest was still a preschooler and my son was in like third grade. And I do understand, and another thing is that we also have to check our own individual privileges as well. I try to check my own. Yes, I'm an African American woman who deals with some aggressions, but I'm also a cis woman. There's some privilege in that. I'm also in a nuclear family. There's some privilege in that. And checking that as well, and understanding, okay, I have these resources that not everyone has, but I also deserve rest just as much as the next woman, as the next human. I deserve peace. I deserve to be mad sometimes. I deserve to be sad sometimes. Really understanding that we deserve grace, and space. It has really been the key to peace for me, is that I deserve grace. So
Yeah,
I extend that to every woman.
I love that. I don't want to get going too more because I'm gonna your whole session will be revealed, but I appreciate the message so much, and I really hope women will take the time. We do advocate a lot for business owners, women business owners in the corridor. Waterloo to Iowa City is kind of our target market,
Mhm.
but um, our conference is not just for women business owners. It's women juggling things, and it's women trying to figure it out and figure out their tribe. And I know that changes over time, but it's so important to know who's got your back. And you know, having somebody inspire you once a year is worth more than you can't put a price tag on what it feels to get inspired by somebody and be like, okay, she's got this, I got this. Like we're fine. We're gonna be all
We got
right.
it. We are. We're gonna be all right. Absolutely. Like, if you are still standing, if you are looking at this broadcast right now, you survived the very beginning of this pandemic, and which I hope is we're coming into the endemic. I think that's the new word that the news has been putting out lately. But but you survived, and you're here. And I really hope that folks come out to you conferences, that they visit my session. She's Busy Being. And I can't wait to connect with you, Kendra, as well as the other women who will be there talking, and especially with those local business people. And I implore my local professionals and my families and my retirees, please visit your local library. Support your local library wherever it's at. They got a lot in store that you may not know about. So check them
Those
out.
busy moms. I used to go to the library and be able to get some work while my kids
Yep.
were doing the stations and the different things at the library. So if you're at your wits end and you need to get something done, that might just be the place to go.
Yes, indeed.
All right. Well, I will make sure all of your links are linked on the description of this, both the live Facebook broadcast and then also on the podcast. Is there anything you want to say before we go to the
Well,
audience?
again, Kendra, I want to thank you for having this platform, not only this platform here this morning, but the platform of you conferences. I think that this is doing a great service to women in our community. And I can't wait to get on stage with you and the rest of the awesome women that will be presenting. And I want to thank everyone who tuned into the live cast. Please support your local library. You can find me on all of social media. I'm going to put my Linktree link there. And absolutely support your local library. Visit us at northlibertylibrary.org.
I can't wait to see that. So thank you as well, and for helping me show the world that diversity is important and it's worth working on and it's not scary. And these conversations are important. I really appreciate that more than you know. And I want the world to know that this is something we're working really hard on. And I love that you're able to help connect all those pieces. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.